Welcome to the very first edition of a show we're calling Simsbury Town News. Hi, my name is Dominique Avery. My guests today are Maria Capriola, Simsbury's very first town manager, and Eric Wellman, Simsbury's first part-time first selectman. I've had the opportunity to get to know them both. I talked to Eric shortly after his election and Maria shortly after her hiring. But now that Eric is already looking ahead to the end of his first two-year term, and Maria has completed her first year, I thought it would be a good time to take a closer look at how things are working out under this entirely new system. So I'm so glad you're here, and Eric, I'm going to start with you. Under the new system, you have a hard balance between your work job and your first selectman's job, and I'm interested in knowing whether it's harder than you expected. Do you feel overburdened?
Well, first of all, Dominique, thank you for hosting this show. This is something that has really been missing in our community, local media, etc. And I'm really glad that I could be here with Maria, and we could make this an ongoing thing. I take a little bit of issue with your characterization as my position being part-time, and I say obviously it is part-time. But it is a full-time responsibility, as you can imagine.
That's exactly what I'm asking about, because I know it's in your mind.
And it frankly, the only reason why it works is because I have an unbelievably flexible employer who wants me to get my work done at the end of the day, but doesn't necessarily care where I sit.
Well, that's good news. But do you feel a lot of pressure?
I take it one day at a time, and I probably drive my wife a little bit crazy because I keep two different calendars. So whenever I do anything, I have to check two places. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's really, really hard, but I've never had a job, and I'm talking about my first selectman job, I've never had a job that is anything close to this rewarding.
Oh, well, that's good news. I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah,
I'm glad you're not feeling overburdened. Maria, now that we're a year into this new system, I wanted to backtrack a little bit and have you maybe describe each of your roles and clarify a little bit for people in the town who does what now that we're in this new system?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. So I'm responsible for the administrative functions. So I am managing the day-to-day operations of the organization. So the departments and the department heads are reporting to me. So if a constituent or resident has an issue, say with a mailbox that might get damaged during winter, I know those are oftentimes still calls or emails that Eric will get. So when we have issues like that pop up, the town manager's office is a really good place for folks to contact, and we will help them, get to the right place to help get their issue resolved. So also, in addition to managing the day-to-day operations of the organization, I'm also responsible for carrying out the policy goals and initiatives of the Board of Selectmen. So that's another important and key responsibility I have. And then also just supporting their work in general. So helping to prepare for their monthly meetings, any work groups that they're establishing. So again, just supporting that work and carrying out their vision.
So you mentioned when some people reach out to you, do people contact you, and is there confusion and you tell them to call Eric, or how do you handle that?
Sure. So what we've been trying to do is when folks call the office and they'll say, can I speak to the first select person? We'll often say, is there something that we might be able to help you with? Because oftentimes folks are used to the old form of government, so they would call the main office and for things, again, maybe the mailbox got damaged during a snowstorm, or there's a pothole, in front of their house. And so if it's something of that nature, we'll often say, we'll help you work through that. We'll help take care of that. If it is something truly that's more, policy in nature, where they do need Eric, he does have office hours. He also has a voicemail message or line that we can connect folks to. So again, if it's really for Eric, we'll do our best to direct them to him. Or if it's something we can handle that's administrative in nature, we'll take care of that.
So Maria just mentioned your office hours. When are they, and how should people contact you?
Sure. So people can drop in between 4 and 6 p.m. on Mondays before Board of Selectmen meetings. But I meet with people all the time. People send me emails or call me, and glad to grab coffee or meet at a mutually convenient time throughout the week. I'm asked from time to time, how do I know who to reach out to? Do I reach out to the first selectman or the town manager's office? What I tell people is that you can always reach out to me. But the bottom line is that if it's something that involves, for example, the Public Works Department, at the end of the day, I'm going to be passing that message along to Maria, who'll make sure that it gets to the right place.
I remember once during this year, I was at a meeting with you, and you were talking about somebody calling you about the Board of Ed, and you had to then straighten them out, saying that was the Board of Ed's budget. And that's something that has nothing to do with you, really.
Well, it's so interesting. I mean, I've had a tremendous learning curve in getting to learn about local government, and one of the first things you learn is that the town budget, while it's the same pool of tax dollars, is really developed quite separately and distinctly by two boards, so the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen. And there are times when I get phone calls related to our schools, and it's not that I'm punting the issue, but I have absolutely no jurisdiction.
So then they need to call there, so it gets a little difficult. So Eric has office hours. Maria, do you have office hours?
I don't have standard office hours, but if it's something that a resident needs to meet with me on, we'll usually schedule an appointment. And then we also have an email address that gets checked every day. So if a constituent or resident is having a hard time making it into the office or making that phone call, it's townmanager@simsbury-ct.gov. That gets, again, checked every day. And we have a lot of residents who will contact me through there. And again, if an appointment's needed, we'll set that up for them.
So you don't do any specific outreach to meet with the public? You just wait for them to come to you? Have you considered having office hours or getting?
Sure. So my schedule gets really difficult and tight at times, just between meetings. In addition to managing the day-to-day organization, I also serve as the HR director, so there's that component to the job, as well as I'm responsible for economic development duties. So my calendar just gets so full so quickly. But generally, we find setting up an appointment is usually the best way when a resident needs to come to meet with me. And then I will do sort of group meetings at times, which for me, being new to the community, has been such a wonderful opportunity for meeting folks. So I'll go and do things like speak to Rotary or speak to the Lions Club. I've done tours of some of the private schools in town. So I really enjoy those opportunities to get out in the community and meet with folks. That's just been really wonderful.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we'll get invitations sometimes where folks will say, "Hey, could you come on out?" And I'm happy to do that.
So this is such a new system, and it was created by the Charter Revision Commission. And I'm sort of curious, has anybody from the Charter Revision Commission contacted either one of you to ask how it's actually working out?
I don't think I've had the direct question.
I've had some conversations with folks on the Charter Revision Commission, but not specifically about, hey, is this decision we made a good one?
Because it was a huge decision.
huge
and it was a huge change for
Yes.
the town, yeah. Interesting. So you haven't heard anything, Maria? You've been here now for a year. A lot of stuff has gone on. I'm wondering what the best thing that happened to you this year.
Oh, wow. A lot of really good things. Personally, the move has just been fantastic. This is such a special place to live. I'm very happy here. My husband and my four-year-old daughter are just incredibly happy. We live in a great neighborhood, lots of terrific neighbors, lots of young children for her to play with. She goes to the Children's Center for preschool and just looks forward to going to school. It's a really great place. So personally, this has been a wonderful move for us. Professionally, it's just been a really exciting year. It's really been an honor to be part of the transition and I think to help the organization, help the community through the transition. And for the organization, I think we've made a lot of strides in terms of process improvements and developing policies, ordinances. We've made a lot of progress on our special projects, which has been very exciting. And we've really been looking at, how can we do things more efficiently? And I've also had a focus on responsiveness and customer service. So as an organization, that's something that we've been really working on is, trying to be customer service oriented and thinking of our residents and our taxpayers as our customers. So it's just been a great year. Lots of opportunity for improvement and challenges and so many special projects that we've been able to work on.
I would repeat the same question, but you sort of touched on it earlier, talking about how rewarding the job has been for you.
Yeah, it has. And just to add to what Maria was saying, my background, for those of you who don't know, is in process improvement. And it's been really cool to be on the front lines and see changes that the town manager has made that really make our town run like a more professional organization. And I think that there's continued opportunity. And one thing that I would love to see us continue to develop is really putting some key performance metrics in place around how our customers are doing. And by customers, I mean the people who come to town hall or call town hall with a question or an issue. So we're able to look at where we're at and continuously strive to get better.
So one of the, to go in a slightly different direction, one of the major things that's coming up is the closing of the Bridge of Flowers for the summer and the construction of the tearing down of Betty Hudson's house and the construction of a park. So what is the timeline and how is that going to work and what's that going to mean? I don't know which one of you wants to take this.
I guess I can start. Sure. So I know that the decision to close the bridge wasn't taken lightly, and it was done in collaboration with the Flower Bridge committee, and the decision was made not to hang flowers this year because it's essentially going to be a construction zone. I am pleased that the two major fundraisers that take place on the bridge, so Burgers on the Bridge and the duck race, are still going to be happening this spring. And then in early June, the bridge will be closing about until November for that construction to take place, which should be complete by our 350th celebration.
Hopefully.
Keeping
my fingers crossed.
But the park, just to give folks an idea, I feel like Simsbury has this incredible gem running through it, which is, of course, the Farmington River. Yet we're so disconnected from the Farmington River, and this is going to really give us a downtown entry point where people can launch canoes and kayaks and interact with this incredible resource.
Yeah, it's really, and there's going to be a pavilion and sort of a place to put kayaks or boats in, and it's starting in June. Is that when they're hoping to start? So I have a very personal question and personal interest in this. The park hasn't been named yet. What's going to be the procedure to name it?
Sure.
And can I put in my suggestion?
Okay, sure. So we do have a naming rights policy. And there would be really one of two ways that the park could potentially get named. The Board of Selectmen could establish a work group to develop a name for the park and then make a recommendation to the full Board of Selectmen, or simply the group as a whole could discuss it and name the park. We do have some key stakeholders that have been involved with the bridge, particularly the Flower Bridge Committee. I'm sure probably some folks from the Culture, Parks and Rec Commission might be interested in assisting, but at some point this summer, through the naming rights policy, the board will need to decide how to proceed with naming the park.
So I'd like to be in that committee because it's my view. I started the Bridge of Flowers, and Betty Hudson, who lived right next door to it, was 100% in favor of it, and it would never have happened without her full buy-in. So I think because it's going to be at her house, it should be called Hudson Park. Anyway. That's my view. That doesn't
seem like too much of a stretch for people to get to.
No,
I think that's a beautiful thing.
We would not have the Flower Bridge if that person living in that house wasn't 100% enthusiastic. If they objected, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Because there were people coming in their front yard all the time.
Right.
So there, I got to put in my opinion.
That's great.
No, thanks for putting that plug in. That's great.
So Maria, I know that when you first started a year ago, you were hit with a whole bunch of new hires.
Yes.
New police chief, Parks and Rec, I think finance and director of planning.
Correct.
Were you overwhelmed? I asked Eric before whether he was overwhelmed.
Sure. I mean, that was definitely a lot being new to the community. And when I first started, a budget was due within 4 weeks of my arrival. So trying to learn the organization, trying to meet folks, in town, trying to get a budget out. And then because of retirements, largely due to retirements, we lost 4 department heads very early on in my tenure. And so within my first 8 months, we appointed 4 department heads. So with those folks being direct reports to me, it was very important to me that I was actively involved with those recruitments, spent a lot of time on them. I wanted to make sure that we got folks who were not only a good fit for the organization, but that would be a good fit for the community. So we really focused on an inclusive recruitment process. We involved a lot of stakeholders, both throughout the organization, but some of our key elected officials and various committees and commissions that would be interacting with those folks. And at the end of the day, I'm really pleased with the 4 folks that we hired. They're really talented, very committed, very hardworking. They're fantastic. They've been working out very well.
I've had the opportunity to get to know Tom Taberski a little bit.
That's great.
And I'm very interested in Parks and Rec and what they're doing. And he's just terrific and just full of enthusiasm. And so if they're all like that,
Yeah, he's
it's
great.
wonderful.
Thank you.
So are you glad that you didn't have to head that process?
Well, I was involved
Right.
in each one of those, and I saw this as just a really unique opportunity. I don't know, a little bit like appointing a member of the Supreme Court. And what I mean by that is, honestly, I don't know how many years I'm going to be first selectman for, but these are some folks who may be around for a very long time in helping shape the future of our town.
So, Maria, one of your responsibilities you mentioned earlier is the budget. And I want to remind people who are watching this that we're recording this before the budget vote. But maybe you could describe a little bit how the budget process works. And maybe, Eric, then you can talk a little bit about there's an increase, which was sort of confusing to people. If you could just explain that. I don't know which one of you wants to go first, but just so the public knows that this is before the budget vote, so we don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, Maria, would you mind taking the high-level process?
Absolutely.
All right.
Great. So my budget, the manager's budget, is due to the Board of Selectmen by the end of February on an annual basis. I prepare an operating budget for the upcoming year and a capital budget that looks 6 years ahead. And I work with department heads basically during the months of December and January, analyzing budgets, budget requests, service improvement requests, again, looking at capital items. So all of that comes together, looking at expenditures and revenues and preparing a recommended budget to the selectmen. Again, that happens at the end of February. We do an in-depth budget workshop day, which is incredibly helpful. And we go department by department. We also look at revenues. We talk about capital projects. We conduct that workshop with the selectmen, usually in early March, and that the public is welcome to attend. We also televise that event. The selectmen adopt a budget. From there, it goes to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance may refer it back to the selectmen. It is quite a lengthy process, and it can get confusing at times for folks. But then once the Board of Finance gets to a point of having an adopted budget, it comes back to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen sets a referendum date. So that process typically occurs throughout April, and the referendum is usually held in May.
And it's on the 14th this year.
It
and
is on the 14th.
This will appear on the air after the 14th. So, Eric, so there is some confusion I've seen on social media. Some people upset with an increase that is not an increase.
If I was going to raise a budget by 14%, which is what we did to our operating budget, I might have some questions too. It's really an accounting change that has driven the vast majority of that increase. There are a number of items that were moved into our operating budget that we've always paid for, but they weren't in that budget previously. And most of those things are things that the town gets reimbursed for anyway. So the true increase in our operating budget is closer to 4%. And there are really no new service enhancements. There was not a lot new that we added to this budget. The driver of that 4% was primarily healthcare. Looking at contractual salary increases and other things that, it's not a fun, sexy thing to talk about, but they're very real expenses that the town has. So what I'm interested in long term is looking at how can we be the most efficient, effective operation to serve the taxpayers as efficiently as possible. And just to give you one example of something that we're actively talking about is looking at areas of possible shared service between the town and the Board of Education, where we might have some
You already do
duplicative
some of it,
services.
but right.
Yeah, there's
Right.
definitely a level of collaboration today, but there are some other areas where there may be some back office functions that can be combined into a single department, which would have many advantages beyond just cost savings.
Well, that sounds good. And we'll
So,
maybe at another time we'll
we're gonna
talk more
keep our
about
eye
the
on the
budget
ball.
after it.
That's right.
I have a silly question. Do the two of you meet and talk with each other outside of the Board of Selectmen meetings? Are you on the phone together? Or?
Let me see what the last time Maria called me was. No, pretty much every
Every day
single
almost.
day.
Yeah.
So, but it's mostly on the phone, right?
Yeah, sometimes in person, by phone. Yeah.
So to get back to the Charter Revision Commission that created this new system of governance, they also created a new Economic Development Commission, and I'm wondering what is happening with that.
Yeah, so that's something I'm really excited about. We wanted to understand why didn't the old Economic Development Commission work as well as we had intended it to. And I think one of the learnings there was that they really needed more direction and guidance from the Board of Selectmen. So we went through, Selectwoman Cheryl Cook and I went through a lengthy interview process. We talked to people who were Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated, and we put a group of people together that was quite diverse, and we tasked them with 4 specific things. So these are things that we see as foundational to helping current businesses expand and attracting new businesses to town. Just to give you one example, looking at different incentives that we'd be able to provide that would be allowed, under Connecticut statute, that would be, part of the toolkit. And that's just one example. So we want to get those things in place and then give them some really fun things to work on. I've got ideas, but we got to obviously figure out what the consensus of the board is.
So where are we in the process that they've started meeting?
So they started working. They've been meeting since the beginning of the year. And they're going to be reporting to the Board of Selectmen at least once a year. I would expect it'll be probably late fall. And we'll understand their progress and then task them with the next thing to work on.
Yeah, and they've been working on a new initiative, a business roundtable is what we're thinking we're going to be calling these sessions. And what we'd like to do on a quarterly basis is invite a small group of business owners, maybe say 20 to 25 business owners in, and ask folks, what do you like about doing business with the town? What don't you like about doing business with the town? What could we be doing to help you grow your business and to stay here? Just to be able to get that kind of feedback from folks in a small group setting would be incredibly helpful. So that's an initiative that the Economic Development Commission has been working on, and I've been assisting them with that work. And we're hoping to pilot our first roundtable discussion in the middle of June. So we're excited about that.
Are their meetings open to the public? And they used to meet in the morning, and now I understand they meet in the early evening or
they do.
Late afternoon.
Yep. They're meeting generally, not always, but generally the 4th Wednesdays of the month at 5:30 at the library.
Yeah, we welcome the public to attend.
Absolutely.
Now, I have another question. Before this new system of the two of you working together, changing the, having a town manager, my fear was that this was a town with an enormous number of volunteers who do a lot of things. My fear was that volunteerism would drop off. I know it's a little early to tell, but have you noticed anything like that? I mean, not that you were here before, but...
So that was my fear too, and I've been transparent in telling people that I voted against this form of government. Having said that, I think that there are many benefits. I think there are some drawbacks, and one of those drawbacks, I think what you raise is a risk. It's been too soon to see if that's come to fruition, but I think that one of the things that makes Simsbury so special is the level of civic engagement. And we wouldn't be Simsbury without it. And that's something that I'm just really conscious of and not wanting to lose.
I agree with you 100%. All right, that's, sort of, I just told you on social media, somebody asked that they said that they moved to town and they haven't gotten to know anybody, and I said, volunteer for a town
That's
group.
right.
Right.
And can
It's
I
the
just
best way to get to
I
know.
just want to finish the thought.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Did I
you're
interrupt you?
fine. I think the reason why I very quickly came around to realizing, no, I think having professional management is the right thing to do. There have been a lot of examples in the year and a half that Maria has been here, where she's brought something to the Board of Selectmen that is either a best practice or something that has worked well, she's seen work well in other places. And instead of it being a political conversation amongst the 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans on the board, it's a policy conversation. And I'm just so pleased about the way that this particular Board of Selectmen has been working together. And I think a piece of that is the way a town manager can take some of the politics out of the process.
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you made it. So there are some, people do have some complaints. And the thing that I hear and see the most on social media is the number of new apartments. Do you get a lot of those complaints too? The new construction along Hop Meadow, and do you hear that kind of thing?
Yes, I hear it when I meet with residents all the time. personally, when I ran during my campaign, my slogan was "Keep Simsbury Beautiful," and in part it was a reaction to some of this development that was built that just didn't look like it meshed with the fabric of Simsbury. And my whole thought is, if we're going to build dense housing, it should be near public transportation, it should be near bike paths, it should be near businesses, so it makes sense and it's a conduit to economic development.
And that all happened before either of you was here, so it's not your fault how it happened.
Well, thanks for pointing that out.
So that
Appreciate
people
it.
don't yell at you. Yeah, we're actually almost out of time. It's quite extraordinary how fast this has gone. I hope we can do it again. Maria, I hope I can get to chat with some of your new hires.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
Eric, you're welcome back anytime.
Anytime,
Just let
love
me
to
know.
be here. Thank you.
But before we go, I want to make sure that people know that Eric and Maria I have a pair, where are my glasses? Oh, here they are, so I can read the teleprompter. Eric and Maria both have a report, which they put out, I think, after every first Selectmen's
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah.
And I want people to know that they can read that report, and there's a lot of information that they can get. You can watch this show again on TV, but you can also sign up for automatic delivery of their reports, and it's not that easy. I tried to do it without somebody telling me. You can go to www.simsburyct.gov/subscriber. And once you're there, you can put in your email address and then select Town News and Announcements, and you'll get their reports in your email. And it's a really good way of keeping up with what's going on if you don't have time to watch all your meetings. I want to thank both of you, Eric and Maria, for coming, and I also want to thank Karen and Kristen at SCTV for helping to get this show on the air. And I want to give Jerry Lintner some special thanks. He's done a show very similar to this over the years, and he did a fabulous job doing it. Monthly interviews with the First Selectman, and he did them at the First Selectman's office, which no longer exists. But now that our form of government has changed, we're changing the format a bit and moving it into the studio and making it a bit more formal. So I just wanted to thank Jerry for everything that he has done. And now I want to thank you for joining us. And if you missed any portion of the show, you can find it on our website, simsburytv.org. You can also watch it on Comcast on channels 5 and 1084, and on Frontier on channel 6069. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for Simsbury Town News.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.